Welcome back. Chapter 21 still. We're covering sections 3 and 4 today. All right, we're going to talk about immunity in general, which is just your body's ability to fight against those diseases. But we're going to talk about active versus passive immunity, okay? So when we talked about the immune response in our last lecture, we talked about how your body produces antibodies, and they're like an army, and they help fight against those pathogens that are getting in, okay? Well, with active immunity, that's exactly what's happening. Your own body is producing the antibodies to fight, okay? But that can happen naturally through an infection or through exposure to a pathogen, and then that immune response happens. Or it can happen artificially, okay? You could receive a vaccination, which is a vaccine that basically contains a harmless version of the pathogen, okay? So remember, the antigens on the pathogens are what trigger our immune response, okay? So you might actually get a vaccine. Here is my wonderful drawing of a virus, okay? And it still has the little antigens on it, okay? But maybe there's no DNA inside of it, okay? Or the DNA inside of it is so weak it's not functional anymore. That would be injected into your body. Your immune system, your immune response would still recognize those antigens, and your body would start producing antibodies, and that army would be ready to go, okay? Well, while this is harmless, your body doesn't know that. And so then if you were exposed to something that could actually make you sick, you wouldn't have to wait for your immune system to build those up. They'd be ready to go, okay? That's how vaccinations work. You've probably heard of something known as herd immunity with this COVID-19 virus going around right now. What herd immunity is when the majority of a population is actually immune to something. And that could be through vaccinations. Diseases like smallpox and polio are gone. They've been eradicated because everybody got vaccinated. And what that did is it took away the host from the virus. The virus no longer had a place to go to live and reproduce and move on. Even if the majority of people are vaccinated, not everybody gets vaccines, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Most people get vaccines, okay? The measles vaccine. Since most people have the vaccine, that disease can't travel very quickly. It has to wait until it can find a host to get into. And so you hardly ever hear of cases of measles anymore because so many people have had vaccinations. Well, with the COVID-19, we're hoping that herd immunity will happen in one of two ways. One is that everybody will eventually be exposed to the disease. Their immune system will build up the antibodies and then will become immune to it. Or a vaccination. They're developing the vaccinations right now. This is why doctors push the flu shot so much, because the more people that have become immune to something, whether from a vaccine or from exposure, the more power it takes away from a disease, okay? It makes it harder for it to spread, all right? Let's talk about passive immunity now, okay? With passive immunity, those antibodies have to come from an outside source. It can still be natural or artificial, okay? So the artificial source would be just an injection being put into your body. Rabies is treated by antibodies being given to the person with an injection, because the body doesn't build them up very fast for rabies. There's some experiments going on right now with COVID-19 where they're taking the blood from people who have survived the disease, because now their blood contains antibodies, and then giving a transfusion to somebody and seeing if those antibodies will help that person recover from the disease. Natural sources would be from the mother to the baby, and that can happen before the baby's born. As the baby's developing, the mother is passing antibodies to the baby. But even after the baby is born, if a mother decides to breastfeed, to nurse the baby, the early breast milk contains a ton of antibodies that kind of gives the baby a kickstart on their own immunity, okay? This is a separate definition now. Why does it keep doing that? I'm not going to draw a line. Antibiotics really have nothing to do with passive immunity. I just didn't want to use a whole page to put antibiotics on there, okay? So what antibiotics are, they are a chemical, and we've talked about this back when we did chapter 8, I think. Antibiotics are just a chemical that help fight against bacteria only, not viruses. They are not antibodies, so it's not this passive immunity. It's just an additional chemical that helps fight against bacteria only. Okay? All right. How do we stay healthy? We've talked about a few things. We've talked about eating right, getting exercise, and not smoking. Okay, those are still absolutely applicable to preventing infectious disease. But there's a few other things. You should get plenty of sleep. The more run down and tired you are, the more stressed you are, the more difficult it is for your immune system to work. Okay, this is why your grandmas probably always say, put a sweatshirt on. You're going to catch a cold if you go out in the rain. You do not get sick from the rain. But if you are out in the cold for a long time, your body is using so much energy to keep you warm that some of that energy might be getting diverted away from your immune system. And so your immune system is a little weaker at that point, okay? So get a lot of sleep, avoid stress, and maintain a good body temperature, I guess. Avoid substance abuse. Any kind of substance abuse can also lower that immune system. Wash your hands. You've heard that a ton right now, I'm sure. And you are recommended to get your immunizations, okay? All of those things, and don't smoke, because smoking, that's that substance abuse. Smoking makes it so your body is working so hard to breathe and pump the heart that energy is going to that, and it's taking away from the immune system. Plus, when the lungs get weaker, those cells, those respiratory cells, are more prone to being infected by the pathogens, okay? All right, so question for you. I want your opinion on this. Are vaccines good or bad? I have my opinion. I hope I didn't share it too much in this lecture because I want you guys to come up with your own opinion. By law, to start 7th grade, you have to be vaccinated. By law, if you have been homeschooled and you're going off to high school or even college, at that point, you still have to be vaccinated. This is controversial, okay? But I want you to do some research, and I want you to decide if you think vaccines are a good thing or a bad thing. Do you think that they're a healthy thing or a scary thing, okay? The internet is filled with biased information, so be careful. Look at more than one site. Look for pros and cons. If you choose one site, that site might be biased and want you to believe what it's saying, and so it might be skewing the data some. Okay, so just be aware of that. And I want you to you're gonna be posting your answer in an email or message me on Edmodo. Okay, this is an assignment. All right, I can't wait to see your answers. Moving on, section 4 now. Non-infectious diseases. Those are diseases that are not contagious because they are not caused by pathogens. Asthma is a non-infectious disease, and this is a picture of asthma right there. You can see the airway kind of narrowed down. If you try to breathe through a straw for a few seconds, you can feel what it's like to breathe when somebody's having an asthma attack. Do not do it for very long because you are not getting the oxygen you need, okay? Diabetes is also a non-infectious disease. It's not contagious. And there's a couple of different types, but either your body isn't producing the insulin it needs, or the body is unable to use the insulin properly. Remember, insulin is kind of the key that opens the cells to the glucose. So either it's not being produced in an amount that's adequate enough, or your body's not able to use it, okay? Cancer is a non-infectious disease. We've talked about cancer before. That's when those cells are dividing abnormally and continually, and it starts to interfere with the healthy tissue working properly. Allergies is a big one. A lot of us probably suffer from different kinds of allergies. You can have food allergies, like hay fever, environmental allergies. That's the allergies to animals and dust and pollen and things like that. You can be allergic to different medications or insect bites, okay? Those are the common ones. And what's happening is your immune system is overreacting to something. It's recognizing the antigens on those things, and it's kicking up its reaction. It's like an inflammatory response, okay? The allergen is the substance that you are allergic to, and that's what's stimulating that allergic reaction, okay? Your body produces something called histamines, and that they come and they're fighting against those allergens, but that's what causes the stuffy nose, the redness, the swelling, the itchy eyes, the runny eyes, all that kind of typical, like, I'm having an allergic reaction, symptoms come from histamines. So typically we take something known as an antihistamine, and it just fights against those symptoms. It doesn't really do anything to fight against the allergens. It just decreases the activity of those histamines because your body really is overreacting. You do have to be careful though, because some allergies are very dangerous. You can have allergies that can cause something called anaphylactic shock, and that's more of a body-wide thing. It can affect your breathing, so it's not always just runny eyes and runny noses and sneezing. You can have different kinds of allergic reactions that can be very, very dangerous. So if you are allergic to something, if you know what your allergens are, be very careful. All right, stay safe. See you guys soon.